Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Silent Paths, Wild Hearts. Episode 11. Chapter 68. Kasha POV. Those words gave me pause. While she may treat me like crap, she did save me and she was my sister. It took me a few seconds to consider my options. I didn't think my sister had done this, but did I owe her my happiness? I felt Gonzalo squeeze my hand and looked down to see the worried look on his face, and I made up my mind. Then you need to search quickly and find a way to absolve her. You and I both know my sister isn't capable of murder. She finds it beneath her, I told him. Armin's eyes flashed red. You will come home or I will go down there personally to get you. You would be declaring war on the moon goddess and my pack if you try to take my beta's fated mate. Helios stood. Mate? Vampires don't have fated mates. Armand said quickly, taken back by his words as he looked at Gonzalo again with curiosity and anger now. That's where you're wrong. Both Adrian and Cassie have found their fated mates within my pack. They have both accepted the other and are therefore under my protection. Helios said seriously. Gonzalo finally stood behind me, an arm around me. Armand looked disgusted. First a human, now a mutt. Do you not have a low? Go find your beloved, Armand. We have no business together. I told him. I could feel my hand shaking now. I needed to get out. I gripped Gonzalo's arm around my waist to stop it from shaking. You were supposed to be my bee. The TV cut off and I turned surprised to see Luna Natalia with the remote. I think that's enough out of that one, she said before she handed me a napkin. I brought it to my nose and wiped. Gonzalo grabbed it from me afterward and cleaned my ear. Do you want to talk about this now or after a few hours? Alpha Helios asked. Now, Adrian answered for me. Sorry, but we need to discuss at least some of it, he said, showing me his phone. It was a text message from an unknown number. Text: tell Cassie she'll be watched if she returns home. Her phone will be hacked. Yours will be too. Switch phones. Don't trust anyone. Tell Cassie I didn't do it and I'm sorry. My eyes widened. Why would Gonzalo put a hand over my mouth? He took my phone and turned it off and took out the SIM. Adrian did the same. Why would she text Adrian and not me? All she texted me was don't come home, she may think you were already hacked. There was a voicemail too. Is there a way to listen to it without turning on the phone? I'll link Marcus to see if Evergreen can help us out. Luna Natalia said and her eyes clouded over. You can link across packs? I asked. Nat can. It's a white wolf gift. Theo answered. Her eyes cleared and she smiled at Helios. He's on his way. I've volunteered us for babysitting duties while he works. Valerie is on shift. Can I be excused for a few minutes? I asked the group. Do you need me to come with you? Gonzalo asked. I could see concern and sympathy in his voice. I shook my head. I needed to get together. I left the phone on the table and went up to my room. I was crying in my room when I heard a soft knock. I'll be down in a minute, I said. The door opened and I felt sparks along my arms before Gonzalo pulled me onto his lap. She's treated me like crap and he hasn't acknowledged me in 200 years. So why does it hurt? I asked him between sobs. Because you are not them. It's okay to love who they were to you, Cassie. He kissed my head and held me. After a few minutes of letting all of my feelings flow quietly, I got back up and cleaned my face. We should go see if Evergreen can find anything. We can take some time, Cassie. Helios and Adrian can tell us if they find anything. Gonzalo answered. I shook my head. I do better if I can keep busy. Let's go find out what's happening. I tell him as I extend my hand. He looks like he wants to argue but thinks better of it, and we went back downstairs. We found Evergreen working in a quiet room. Theo, Sebastian, Adrian, and Elias were sitting to the side. They put their fingers up to their mouths to warn us of making noise. There was only one available seat in the corner, so Gonzalo pulled me onto his lap, making me blush but loving the way he was making lazy circles on my waist while we waited. 5 minutes later, I was beginning to think that it might have been better to wait in my room like Gonzalo suggested, as I was going crazy in the quiet when Evergreen made a quick chuckling sound and folders popped up on his screen. He clicked a button on his phone and said, "You're good but not that good. Did you get in?" Theo asked and Evergreen jumped. "Sorry, I forgot you were there," he said as he went red. "Yes, I got in." "Got in where?" I asked. "He's trying to find more information on what's happening, so he's been trying to pick the back gate open to the Vampiric Council files. I also got into your voicemail. Would you like to hear that first?" he asked. I nodded, and after a few clicks, we heard my sister's voice. "Carissa, Cassie. Don't come home. It's a trap. I didn't kill father. I'm sorry." "Don't trust unknown male voice, my queen. We have to go. Carissa, don't come back, Cassie. I hope you're safe there." "I'm sorry." Loud pounding on door. "Unknown, this way my call end. Can you play it again?" I asked Evergreen. "Again," I said after it was over a second time, going closer to the speaker. "What are you hearing, Cassie?" Theo asked. "I know that voice, but I can't pinpoint it. Do you want me to play it again?" Evergreen asked. "No, it'll come to me later." "What else did you find?" I found the crime photos," he said as he pulled up a folder. "I'm also trying to hack into the security at the estate, but I can see there is someone in the system right now and I don't want to alert them that I'm in there. I've copied the cloud files for now and all the council server is being copied as well. I can't keep a live feed without my virus." "What do you need for that?" I asked. "I need someone to click on a link with the virus," he said. "Can they backtrack to me?" I asked, having an idea. "No. My virus is undetectable," he assured. "I am still sending reports on the missions. Can we embed that into the next one?" "Yes, as long as whoever reads them is on the server, we should be able to get a feed." "Okay. I guess I have a report to write," I said. I made a fist as I steeled myself for what was coming next. "Can I see the crime photos, please? Are there any documents with information on why they are blaming my sister?" Cassie. Gonzalo hesitated. I have to. I know my sister. I will be able to tell if she was telling the truth or not. I'll be okay. I told him. He sighed and nodded at Evergreen. The screens came up and the first jarring picture was blown up on the screen. I took in a sharp breath as I looked at my father sitting at his desk, head tilted back sideways, eyes blank staring at nothing in horror. This once proud man, now only an empty shell. His usually crisp burgundy shirt was torn open in a gaping hole where his heart should be. I could see the binds on his arms tying him to the chair. His heart was on his desk, with the knife plunged through the middle. I snorted, despite the horror I could feel in my bones at the grisly scene. They think my sister did this? She may look tough in public, but the woman cries at Sarah McLachlan commercials. She couldn't have done this. She doesn't have the stomach for it. She had no problem ordering my death. Gonzalo said, anger rolling off him. No, that was him, I said to him as I pointed at my father's corpse. Carissa didn't care for you, but she didn't order your death. My father chose the guards. They were instructed to kill you by my father. It's one of the reasons I tried to kill him. I took a deep breath, before I nodded to Evergreen. He flipped pictures. It was a close-up of the heart and some documents on top of it. I recognized the dagger. I had a similar one in my bag. Our father had given us each a pair as we were growing up, saying a princess must know how to defend herself against those who coveted our position. Carissa never liked it. She was abysmal even in basic training. Sabina had saved mine from being thrown away when I was arrested. Is that your name on the paper? Gonzalo asked. I squinted past the blood and saw what he was talking about. Evergreen, are there any photos of the documents? I asked. He sorted the files by thumbnails and shook his head. I copied this over just a bit ago. It's possible they haven't uploaded everything. I can try again later. I sighed. Armand mentioned something about the labs. Whoever is behind this is not my sister, but it might be another player outside of your rogue leader and councilman. It could very well be that the vampires also have a traitor in their high ranks. We all stood in the quiet room as we digested this information. Could it be Armand? He seemed pretty fixed on keeping his title. Adrian asked. I don't think he has the brains to plan something this intricate. Plus, getting Carissa out of the throne, puts him out of his too. Seems like a pretty stupid move to make, I countered. Adrian looked like he wanted to say something but looked towards Gonzalo quickly before he looked away. What, Adrian? You're thinking something, I said. Armand has a thing for you. Maybe his whole plan banked on playing hero and making you his queen. Again with this? The man treated me like this for 200 years. He took every chance he could to humiliate me. I shook my head. That's only because you refused him. You never saw the way he looked at you. He had a thing for you. Trust me. I saw it and I'm not even allowed in the estate. He said. It's still a stupid plan. I would have never accepted him no matter the situation. I answered as I stroked a thumb on the hand that was holding mine to soothe the jealousy I could feel coming from Gonzalo. He doesn't know that. Adrian shrugged. I looked around at the rest. Gonzalo shrugged, though I could feel the anger leaving him in waves. It's one of many theories. I don't think we can discount it. So what do you want to do? Gonzalo asked me after a minute. I looked around and realized everyone was waiting on me to say something. Nothing. We have our own problems. Let them deal with this internally. I meant what I said. They haven't been my family in 200 years. If we can find something to help my sister from here, good. If we can't, then we can't. I won't put the pack in danger for something that doesn't involve any of us. I looked at Gonzalo's phone. It's time for your training. I'm going to go change. We need new phones. Can you help us with that? I asked Gonzalo. He nodded and gave me a small smile. Evergreen, if you find anything else, please let me know. I'll have someone reach out when I have that report ready. I started to walk out when I heard Sebastian say, I'm not sparring with her after that. I'll end up with something broken. Maybe Helios wants his rematch. I chuckled as I walked out. He wasn't wrong. After training, Evergreen pulled us into the conference room. Helios had an ice pack on his shoulder and I had one on my rib. Oddly enough, I felt better, though I felt a little guilty over dislocating his shoulder. What did you find? Helios asked. They uploaded the documents from the picture. I thought you might want to see, he said as he pulled up several pictures of documents on the screen. They appeared to be email correspondences. My eyes filled with tears at the information found on them. In my heart, I couldn't believe the words were true. Gonzalo's arm went around my waist. I read them multiple times before I realized they were talking behind me. Cassie. Adrian's voice came from my side. I know what you're thinking, but, what? I prompted. I don't think this was the Queen, he said. Everyone was quiet as I tried to figure out his words. What do you mean? How can you know? It's going to sound silly, but, he looked uncomfortable. What? Queen Carissa hates her title. She doesn't sign her emails with Queen. It's always Carissa or Q Carissa. She never ends her emails with her official title. She signs official documents and she lets people call her Queen, but she has never used her full title if she can avoid it. I zeroed in on the signatures. I don't know. I never paid attention to her email signatures. Evergreen, can you figure that out? Helios asked. I would need samples of her emails. I'll try to hack into the Queen's email. It would help if I had that virus in the system. I can piggyback off it and work with less risk. They do have a certain degree of security. Evergreen answered. We should move up the rate in Glasgow. The more information we have, the better. Gonzalo, once the scouts check in, we'll start planning the trip. If we're abroad, we can act faster, closer to the source of the problem. Helios directed toward Gonzalo, Theo, and Sebastian. Alpha. I don't want you all in this. I appreciate the help with Evergreen, but this is as close as I want any of us to this problem. I insisted. Cassie, if you end up having to go back to Italy to help your sister, I want us in a place where we can provide backup. We're not leaving you and Gonzalo to deal with this alone again. If we have more answers to your seizures, the better prepared we can be for whatever comes our way. I took a shuddering breath at his words and I only trusted myself to nod gratefully. Gonzalo and I walked back to the house we stayed at to pick up our things. I looked around at the beautiful setup. Seems a shame that this place got no action, I said with a smirk. Gonzalo laughed and pulled me to him. Is that a challenge, Muñeca? I smiled. A request. He picked me up and I dropped my bag, wrapping my legs around his waist. He walked us over to the makeshift bed while I devoured his lips. I couldn't get enough of him. Every touch of his hands and mouth felt new and like home at the same time. I was addicted to him. He was my Lalo. He made me feel whole. I'd struggled over the last week not to rush things, wanting him to know the new broken me. But with it, he and Dario accepted me as I was and who I was, wanted him. For 200 years I had felt dead inside. He came back into it and turned my entire body into a live raw wire. I tugged at his shirt as he laid me down. 2 seconds. He pulled out the phone and the projectors came back on. We were in a field of purple-blue flowers in the middle of the day. I looked around at the scene he had created with awe. What are they? I barely got out before I moaned as he returned to his ministrations of my neck. Bluebonnets. When we lived in Texas, I used to go to this field in the summer that was full of them. They reminded me of you. Delicate and beautiful yet wild. He said as he pulled my shirt over my head. My eyes watered and I flipped him over onto his back. I rubbed my palm over the bulge in his pants and felt empowered at the groan that escaped his lips as he dropped his head back onto the pillow. I had always been shy before, but now I was free. Free of the fear that he would find out who I was and leave me. Free of my fear of my feelings for him. Free of judgment. I wanted him, and knowing the extent of his love for me now, I wasn't afraid to show him everything I was and the fire only he could stoke in me. I unbuckled his belt and pulled his boxer briefs down. I put my lips on his swollen head and waited until his eyes connected with mine before I pulled him into my mouth. His eyes darkened before his eyes dropped to the back of his eyes and his hand made its way into my hair as I took more of him into my mouth. Baby, that's it, just a little bit deeper, Goddess Cassie, I can smell your arousal. It's so hot. We stayed there for a while longer. His phone beeped and he groaned. We should start heading back, he said as he picked me up and took me to the basement bathroom which had a small shower. Do we have another meeting? I asked as I quickly showered. No, Elias helped me set up after I promised him he could show Adrian the pay stream this morning. He grinned sheepishly. We changed and I looked around as Gonzalo started picking up all the bedding. He dumped it in a bag and brought out a new bedding set and pillows from a closet. I helped him start arranging the new set when he suddenly started chuckling. I never thought I'd be helping someone else get laid. He told me as we inspected our work. Come on, they should be here in about an hour. Our scouts should be checking in around 5 a.m. We don't want to miss their call. Gonzalo POV. I stared at Cassie while she slept, her hand on my chest. I would have to get up in 20 minutes to deal with some work, but I enjoyed watching her sleep. She did this twitch with her nose sometimes when she was dreaming. It was the cutest thing. Can we run with her soon? Dario asked. She doesn't have a wolf, I reminded him. She can ride on my back. I want her to know me," he said wistfully. "Okay. You can ask her tomorrow," I said. He perked up at that. "You're going to let me talk to her again? She's your mate too." "I'm sorry I've been hogging her for the last week. You deserve to spend time with her too," I apologized. He wagged his tail as we continued to watch her sleep until I needed to get up to change. I went over to the new medical building to run through with the construction foreman and the inspector. I was eager to get everyone out of the basement. This place had more room and more natural light. It would be good for them. The first floor was built as a small hospital. There were 2 small operating rooms for small procedures, meeting rooms for group sessions, patient rooms, and 2 big rooms with beds. The top 2 floors were set up as dorms. There were lots of reinforced windows that would resist even an angry bear trying to break through. Thankfully, Red had found a way to get that request completed without physical bars. We didn't need this to feel like another cage. We had even set up a small garden in the back. The psychologist said it would help. After the building passed inspection, I went over to give Helios and Nat the good news, and we spent the rest of the afternoon ordering furniture for the new building. At around 4 p.m., I had dinner and went to see if Cassie was up yet. I found her in the common room with Adrian, Theo, and another couple of warriors playing poker. I sat down next to Cassie and watched. "Where's Seb?" "Patrol duty," Theo said as he scratched his wrist. I smirked when he raised. Cassie had 2 pairs. The other 2 folded right away. I watched Adrian looking at his cards. He was such a bad poker player. He always bit the inside of his cheek and his eyes sparkled when he had a good hand. After 30 seconds of thinking it over, he folded and it was Cassie's turn. I squeezed her waist twice with the hand I had around her. She gave me a quick look and I tried to nod at her quickly. I looked over at Theo, who was looking at the interaction suspiciously. I shrugged at him innocently while Dario laughed in my head. "Call," Cassie said and showed her 2 pairs. As suspected, Theo only had a low pair. Cassie did a little happy dance as she grabbed her winnings. They continued playing as I watched Cassie lazily. Once the sun had set, we headed down to training and then spent the next few hours going through all the documents our scouts had sent over. At the end of the exhausting night, I could barely keep my eyes open. I went up to my room and looked around. I wanted Cassie up here, but I wanted to make sure she was safe. I wondered if she would want to change anything in the room. I'd hardly done anything to it since we got it. It was pretty basic. I started feeling some discomfort in my chest as I walked back to our room. I wondered if there was some splinter left over from the arrow, though Dario assured me there wasn't. I made it back to the room but stopped when I heard the shower running. "We could use a shower." Dario wagged his tail and panted. "We sure could. Why don't you go join our mate? I am pretty tired," I suggested as I retreated and led him forward. Dario walked towards the bathroom. He opened the door and paused. Cassie was not in the shower. She was in the corner of the room, fully clothed, crying silently. "Do you want me to handle it?" I asked Dario. "No. I can do this," he said sadly. He walked over to her and sat next to her, opening up his arms and pulling her tight when she crawled into them. Her sobs were breaking both of our hearts, and I was really worried about the seizures. Dario felt my worry and began to rub his hands on her shoulders and down her arms until he reached her hands. Neither one was trembling, thankfully. Now we just needed to figure out what was happening. Her dad's death again? I suggested. Likely, but why now? She cried yesterday when she found out and it wasn't this bad. We'll just wait until she calms down and we'll ask her. He answered. You and I both know that grief isn't linear. I said, and he grunted in agreement. We sat on the floor for half an hour before Cassie managed to calm down. When she finally pushed her head up from our chest, Dario simply waited for her to speak first. Dario, she asked. He smiled at her and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Hello, mate. Will you tell me why you're sad? He answered softly. Is Gonzalo mad? She asked. No. We are both sad to see you sad. He is letting me be here with you right now. Talk to me, Cassie, what happened, my love? I got an email from Evergreen. He forwarded some documents that were uploaded along with the evidence the council had gathered and some drafts. He said he thought I deserved to see these in private. And these are what got you upset. When she nodded and teared up again, he asked, will you show them to us? We stood up and followed her out to the bed. Her laptop was still open on top of it, a singular folder open. We grabbed it from her and sat down on the bed next to her. There were several pictures and saved emails inside the folder. We clicked the first one open. They were medical records and statement balances showing as paid. Pictures of her brain scans and blood test results. There were pictures of incomplete letters that showed as evidence found in a drawer in his desk. The letters were all addressed to Cassie with dates ranging from the last 100 years. None of them said anything. It appeared he never bothered to fill them in past them being addressed to her. When we get to the emails, is when we connect all of the dots together. There were email correspondences between her doctors and her father where they advised him of the results and what they were doing to figure out the issue with Cassie. There's a mention of how much she's being charged and how much he was paying out of pocket. What they were telling her was the reason for several price reductions in her exams. The last of the emails were drafts. Her father never sent them. There were about 10 in all. All incomplete, time-stamped all through the last 5 years. They all started the same way. Dear Cassie, hello daughter, dear Princess Kasia, I'm sorry, please forgive me. We've lost so much time together, I'm so proud of you. Dario pulled Cassie up and led her to the shower. He disrobed her and himself. He took her into the shower where he washed her tenderly as she continued to cry silently. Once he was done, he dried them off and carried her into the bedroom, where he laid her down and held her as she cried. Dario held her as firmly as he could without hurting her. After a while, he started rocking her and he started reciting in a whisper, "Tonight I can write the saddest lines." I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. Through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. I kissed her again and again under the endless sky. She loved me, sometimes I loved her too. How could one not have loved her great still eyes? Tonight I can write the saddest lines. To think that I do not have her. To feel that I have lost her. To hear the immense night, still more immense without her. And the verse falls to the soul like dew to the pasture that's beautiful. Who said that? She asked. She'd stopped crying to listen to him. It's Love Sonnet 20 by Pablo Neruda. It sounds better in Spanish. He smiled at her and she chuckled and kissed our jaw. Her breath hitched and she snuggled further into us until she fell asleep. There was nothing we could say or do to ease that heartache. Dario retreated once her breathing evened out and I watched her sleep for a while longer before sleep claimed me as well. It was probably a couple of hours later when I felt a shift in the bed, making me wake up. I looked up to see Cassie sitting on the bed looking forward. "What's wrong, love?" I asked as I brushed my hand up her arm. She didn't respond or move. There was no reaction. Her scent hit me and Dario perked up in the back of my head. Her scent of cogita and lavender had shifted. She smelled more lavender than cogita right now. I sat up, trying to figure out what was happening. "Cassie?" I asked softly. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were flashing violet and red. I could feel Dario pacing and trying to push forward. "What's the matter with you?" I asked him as Cassie just stared at us. "Mate?" he said, sounding confused. "Yes, I know. Something's wrong with her." I stated the obvious. Dario whimpered and kept pacing. "Cassie, love, what's wrong?" I tried again. Her mouth opened and it looked like she was trying to talk but nothing was coming out. Cassie." I tried to shake her slightly, thinking she was stuck in a nightmare. She tried again. Dario was going nuts in my head. "Take a deep breath, Cassie. Tell me, sweetheart." I said a little more frantically as I realized her nose was beginning to bleed. "As she said before she fell back on the bed. I turned on the light and went to check on her. "Cassie? Come on, Cassie. Wake up for me, baby." I pleaded as I shook her as I knelt on her side of the bed. I was rewarded by a fluttering of her eyes as she came to. "Gonzalo? What's wrong?" she asked. I let out a long breath of relief and dropped my head to her shoulder. "Gonzalo?" she asked again. I lifted my head and tried my best to smile. I kissed her forehead as she sat back up and I cleaned her nose with my thumb. "You scared me. How long have you been sleep-talking?" I asked. Her face turned to one of confusion. "I don't sleep and talk," she said. "Well, no, you didn't technically say anything," I said as I sat down next to her. "But your eyes kept flashing red and you kept trying to say something but never quite got it out. Your nose was bleeding." I showed her my still stained thumb. She swiped at her nose and got up when she noticed it was still bleeding a bit. She handed me a tissue to clean my hand and then grabbed her phone. Shortly after, there was a knock on the door. I put on a pair of shorts as she put on panties and one of the long shirts she likes to wear to bed. Adrian walked in with a sleepy but worried look on his face. "What's going on? Have you ever seen me try to sleep-talk?" she asked. No," he said as he took in the tissue in her hand. "What happened?" She woke up and her eyes were flashing red and back. She kept trying to say something but it was like she couldn't get it out. Then her nose started bleeding and she fell back asleep. I explained, realizing how strange it actually sounded. It's still escalating, Adrian said with worried eyes. Elias suddenly appeared in the doorway and his arms went around Adrian. Are you okay? He asked. Adrian gave him a small smile and nodded. What do you mean it's still escalating? I asked him. Her symptoms were stable for the longest time. But lately, the last few months to a year, the ear bleeds are new. Her nose never bled this much or this often. Whatever is going on with her seizures has been escalating. I had hoped now that she found her mate that they would stabilize again. I'll contact the council in a few hours. We'll get those specialists here. I told her. She was trying to hide the worry in her face, but her eyes betrayed her. She was scared and that made me scared. I went up to her and gave her a kiss on the cheek. We'll figure this out. I turned to Adrian and Elias. Thank you. We'll talk again later. Get some rest, guys. Nothing you can do now. Adrian nodded at me and they left, leaving me and Cassie alone again. We laid down in bed and I held her until she fell asleep again. Helios. I reached out to see if he was awake. Hey, what are you doing up? Did you have something set up I'm forgetting about? He asked in a sleepy voice. Can we contact the council for those specialists for Cassie today? I asked. Nat already sent the request. They should arrive in a few days. What's going on? His voice turned to worry. Her symptoms are escalating. What? How? I explained everything that happened and he was quiet for a while. Why now? She's been going through this for 20 plus years and now it's escalating? What changed? If I know. I said, frustrated with the lack of answers. You said her scent changed. Could she be pregnant? He suddenly asked. I froze at his words and looked over at my sleeping mate. Could she be pregnant? We haven't been wearing protection. So soon. I stammered. Why don't you bring her to Nat tonight? Her gift would be able to see it if she's pregnant. He volunteered. I sigh, I'll talk to her when she wakes up. And if she is? Are you ready for that? He asked. I'm worried about her seizure problem throughout a pregnancy, but if you're asking if I would want a pup with her. Yes. If we can do it safely, yes. I said, telling myself not to get my hopes up. I'll talk to Celeste to see if Kara has any information about her. She's also a part of my sister's plan, she must know something. Helios suggested. Yeah, good call. Get some rest. We'll figure it out. I hope so. I can't lose her again, Helios. I won't survive it. I said as my voice broke. It won't get to that. We'll find answers one way or another. I only managed to fall back asleep about an hour later and only in short spurts. I kept waking up and checking Cassie. Thankfully, she slept fitfully the rest of the day. I woke up again at 4 p.m. when I felt the bed shift. I stood up so quickly and looked around, relieved when I saw her walking towards the bathroom. Are you okay? She asked at the door. I nodded sheepishly and ran a hand over my face. I heard the toilet flushing and she came back out. I patted the spot beside me. I want to talk to you. About? She asked tentatively. About us having unprotected ex. Her brows furrowed and I grabbed her hand. I wish I knew how to bring it up more tactfully. Last night, your scent changed. I was wondering. Would you let Nat check to see if you're pregnant? Her eyes went wide at my words. My scent changed? What does that mean? She asked. For werewolves, it usually means your mate is carrying a pup, I answered. What did my scent change to? I pushed forward and sniffed. My brows furrowed and I grabbed her, bringing her neck to my nose. Dario, I didn't imagine it, did I? I asked him. No. I smelled it too. But, he hesitated. But what? Her scent didn't change. One part of her scent became stronger than the other. It's confusing. I don't know why it would happen like that. The confusion was clear in his voice. Your scent is back to normal. I don't know what's going on, but it changed last night. I pulled back, frustrated. She put her hand on my cheek and kissed me. I believe you, she said. So, you'll let Nat check you? I sighed in relief. She nodded timidly. I got up to go to the restroom. What if I am? She asked softly. I stopped and walked back to her. I knelt in front of her. Do you want kids? I asked, unsure of what her answer would be. I don't know that I'll be a good mom. She said, looking away. But you want kids? I asked again. She nodded. I pulled up and kissed her forehead. Then you'd be making me the happiest man in history. The timing might not be ideal, but as long as we can figure out how to keep you safe through pregnancy with your seizures, I would be over the moon to have a little pup with you. I have zero doubt that you would make an amazing mom. I stood up but she grabbed my arm. I looked down at her. And if I can't have a pup with the seizures? Then we adopt. There are many ways for us to become parents, Cassie. And many little kids that could use a loving parent. We technically already have one kid, right? And he's such a handful as it is, seeing as he's listening on the other side of the door. I smirked as I shouted the last part. I had heard him stop outside the door when I stood up. Cassie began chuckling as the door opened and in walked Adrian with a blush on his face. I have to use the restroom. I'll let you update him. I gave her another kiss on the forehead as she nodded and headed to the restroom as Adrian was jumping onto the bed eager for his supposed tea. I called Helios when we were ready and he and Nat came over. My stomach was doing flips at the thought of Cassie being pregnant. Dario was driving me nuts with his pacing. I couldn't tell if I'd be upset or relieved if she wasn't. I would love to have a pup with her, but there are too many medical variables right now. Too many risks for her. I squeezed her hand as Nat came in. I could feel her nerves rolling off her. Helios stood by the closed door as Nat approached. Are you ready? She asked us. Cassie looked at me briefly before she nodded at Nat nervously. Kasha POV Nat put her hand on my stomach and I held my breath as she closed her eyes to use her gift. I hadn't thought about having children at all. I never thought myself to be good mother material, but when Gonzalo asked me if I wanted children, I hadn't had to think twice about the answer. I wanted to have his babies. I wanted a life with Gonzalo and everything that entailed. But was this the right time? Nat opened her eyes and backed up. I'm sorry, Cassie. You're not pregnant right now. I was surprised at the depth of disappointment I felt at her words. I did my best to smile and nod at her. Thank you for checking, Nat, I said. We'll let the others know and give you two a few moments, Helios said, and they left. Once the door clicked shut, I felt the stinging in my eyes as Gonzalo tisked and pulled me on his lap. I don't know why I'm this gutted, I said, trying to keep together. 20 minutes ago, children were the last thing on my mind. Why does this hurt, Lalo? I sniffled. Because having a child with you will be the greatest adventure we could ever ask for. It's okay to be sad, Cassie. I'm sad too, but we will get our chance to be parents. I know we will. We held each other for a bit before we got up and showered. The next few days were spent strategizing, organizing, and training for Glasgow. 2 days before we were due to leave, Gonzalo and I drove over to the hospital in Phoenix where we met with the specialists the council had sent. I was surprised that they were not all actual doctors. They had sent a witch and a shaman among them to see if they could see anything science would miss. We had a consultation and spent most of the night taking scans, blood tests, and a lot of tests. Gonzalo was hopeful they would have answers by the time we got back, but I didn't want to get my hopes up again. This wasn't my first rodeo. Celeste had a big sit-down dinner the night before we left and she insisted that we attend with our mates. I was born a vampire, so the smells of dinner didn't bother me, but after a while, even I was wishing I could taste it with the way everyone was reacting to her food while I sipped my blood from the special wine glasses they provided for Adrian and me. We had a final meeting afterward as Alpha Marcus and Celeste were going to be in charge of Guardian Moon while Helios and Nat came with us. As everyone was exiting, Celeste called us back. Helios asked me if Karen knew anything about what is happening with your seizures. She said. Gonzalo, Helios, and Nat came back into the room and closed the door. I think you should speak with Kara, she said as she sat down again. I looked nervously at Gonzalo and he nodded. I sat across from her and Celeste's eyes turned black. Hi, Cassie. It's lovely to meet you officially. I'm Kara. Hi, Kara. You wanted to speak with me? I said nervously. Yes. I hope you know I fought my sister for this information. I'm very fond of Gonzalo and I want to see him happy, but my sister is very cryptic. She won't let me tell you everything. She just keeps lecturing me about interfering too much and upsetting the balance and personal growth. Some things you have to figure out on your own. She rolls her eyes and everyone chuckles. Anyways, I begged and she finally let me tell you a few things. Are you ready? Yes please, I said as I squeezed Gonzalo's hand. You have a few decisions coming up. The choices you make will determine your future, but there is a happily ever after waiting for you if you make the right ones. Trust his love for you and the family you've made. I've told Dario this part already, but Gonzalo shouldn't mark you. You need to wait for the full moon. It will make things easier as she'll be able to shield you from the pain, the rest will be up to you. She looked like she was done, before she added, oh, one more thing. Adrian is your child. He was always meant to be your child. Your decisions will affect him as much as they will affect you. You are connected, much like my brother is connected to his warriors. Your destinies are intertwined. Her eyes went back to their normal blue. That's all she's allowed to say. I hope it helps you, Celeste said and reached out to squeeze the hand that Gonzalo wasn't holding. At her touch, I felt a pull around my abdomen and I found myself in a very familiar place that had haunted my nightmares for many years after my capture. What is this? Gonzalo asked. A memory. I'm sorry, Cassie. I can't control when it happens. We are supposed to see something here. Do you know where we are? She asked as Alpha Marcus stepped forward next to her. Yes, this is where I was taken, I said as I saw myself walking towards the bar. This was a moment I had wished I could change many times. A few minutes later, I see myself stumbling out of the bar. I don't remember any of this. The last thing I remember is sitting at the bar. As I got around the bar, a black van pulled up from a corner and 4 men started shouting instructions. That's the one. Grab her. Someone tried to grab me and even in my drugged state, I twisted his arm and flipped him over. I kept trying to stumble forward but one of the other men came up and swung at me, making my head hit the wall. Don't kill her. We paid a lot of money for a royal. Grab her. She's barely conscious. The leader yelled. I finally passed out and they took me into the van. So it's true? Carissa sold me? I asked, feeling the betrayal I hadn't wanted to feel since we saw the emails. I knew they hated me but this. Gonzalo's hand squeezed mine and he moved to hug me before we were pulled forward again. We were in the lab room I dream quite often. I grip Gonzalo's hand as I watch as I cursed the doctor. I flinch as he inserts the serum. I expect to see myself writhing in agony but freeze as I see someone appear at my side. The woman is beautiful. Her bronze skin and long black hair are perfect. She looks sad, and in pain as she caresses my hair and I see my arm begin to twitch when the burning begins. I'm sorry, this is the only way to save you. She whispers and the words resonate with familiarity in my head. She bends down and kisses my forehead and I see a glow begin to spread through my forehead. My back arches and I scream before she disappears and I collapse. The doctor, unaware of the presence of the woman, checks me over before he says pity. I thought that formula would work, as he calls over 2 orderly who carry me out of the room. I feel the tug in my abdomen and I'm pulled forward and back into the present. Celeste is holding a hand to her mouth, her eyes watering. Oh Cassie! I'm sorry that happened to you. Gonzalo pulls me out of my chair and into his arms, but I'm just numb. Who was that woman? I asked. That was our moon goddess, Selene. Alpha Marcus said from where he now stood behind Celeste, trying to comfort her. What does it mean? What did she do to me? I ask. Why would she hurt me? I don't know but she said it would be the only way to save you, Gonzalo said, trying to comfort me. Why me? I asked him. Because you are important, Celeste said. What did you guys see? Helios finally asked. We all turned to where he and Nat were still standing near the door. What they did to Cassie? Alpha Marcus said and he began explaining everything we saw. I was grateful because I still couldn't make sense of what we saw. Gonzalo sat down and put me in his lap as he kept kissing my temple and rubbing his hands on my arms, giving little comforting squeezes. When Alpha Marcus finished retelling the memories I saw, the entire room was quiet. Will Kara not tell us what happened now? What my sister did to her? Helios asked Celeste. Celeste shook her head no. Helios sighed, so then we can do nothing but wait until the full moon. That's in 2 weeks. Will you two be okay to hold off on marking until then? Helios asked. Yes. We'll be fine. Dario and I both know it's important. We won't lose control, Gonzalo said as he kissed my temple again. Okay. I guess we keep going and searching for answers. We leave tomorrow. Hopefully, we can figure out what was in the serum in a few days. He said as he looked at me with worry in his eyes. 20 hours later, we were all sitting in a jet on our way to England. Gonzalo hasn't let me out of his sight. I woke up 3 times from nightmares to find him staring at me as if I would disappear. He looked exhausted and had finally fallen asleep, an hour into the flight, but he had my hand firmly grasped between both of his. Adrian came over and sat across from us. Is he okay? He asked as he looked at Gonzalo's tight grip on my hand. I am not sure. He says he's fine, but every time I try to do something on my own, he gets a little frantic. He's scared to lose you, Adrian said. I'm not going anywhere. I questioned. A part of him knows that, but after everything you saw and found out yesterday, your increasing symptoms, and your history together. Can you blame him? He asked quietly. I sighed. How can I get him past it? You can't. That's his demon to deal with. You'll just have to wait until he deals with it, he said while looking down at my sleeping mate with sympathy. I nodded at him, still looking at Gonzalo's sleeping face. I turned back to Adrian. How are you doing? He smiled mischievously. I've got my own wolf who doesn't want to let me out of his sight. Especially after finding out that my fate is somehow linked to yours. Sorry, I said sheepishly. He shook his head. You know my fate was linked to yours since the day you saved me. Even if it weren't, I would follow you to the ends of hell if you asked me to. You're my Snow White. I gave a little sniffle. I've been pretty emotional since I found out Carissa's sold me to the lab. Yes, I know what happened to me was done to me, but I never thought I was specifically targeted, much less to see confirmation my sister had sold me. I always thought I was in the wrong place and wrong time. To find out that she hated me enough to want this for me, and that knowledge cut deep. What's wrong, Cassie? Gonzalo's sleepy and concerned voice came from the side as he sat up and looked around for a threat. She's getting all mushy because I said something nice. Go back to sleep. Adrian ordered. Gonzalo grunted, grabbed my hand again, and laid back down. Don't make my mate cry, Adrian, he said with a yawn. Elias came over and sat next to Adrian, who decided it was a good time for a nap. I got to know Elias over the next few hours before we too decided to nap. I was shaken awake a few hours later by Nat. The window. The sun is rising. She pointed. I nodded gratefully and pulled mine and Adrian's window. I heard a few more blinds close and realized everyone was closing their windows for our protection. I smiled gratefully at them and the expression was returned. Even Isidro seemed to have come around. I laid back down and went back to napping. Cassie. We're here, Muñeca. Gonzalo's voice woke me up. What time is it? I asked. 4 p.m. local time. Nat's got some clothes for you and Adrian, he said as he helped me up. Adrian was already walking towards the back of the plane, which had a private room. I took the thick clothing from Nat and popped in after Adrian. The perks of being a vampire. We get to sweat for a few hours until we get to the hotel, he said with mock cheer. Could be worse. Armand put me on 3 layovers in coach on the way here. I reminded him. Ew, you're right. These guys treat us pretty nice. Yeah, they seem to accept us, don't they? I said thoughtfully. You had doubts, he asked. Just used to the opposite. You know how everyone treats us. I shrugged, hoping he would drop it before I got emotional again. With the bond growing and Gonzalo's current overprotectiveness, I half expected Gonzalo to rip through the door if he felt me get upset. They were dumb. Half of them didn't even know why they had to treat us like this, they just did. He said as he pulled on his gloves. I shrugged again as I put my hoodie on and gloves. I hated this as much as he did. It was the biggest inconvenience of being a vampire. Death by sun. Gonzalo and Elias were waiting for us outside the door. The rest had already disembarked. The door to our vehicle is open. The car is tinted so you should be able to remove the hood inside and the AC is on full blast. We're only a couple of hours from sunset, Gonzalo informed us as he led us towards the open door. We got to the hotel fine. The biggest struggle was getting up the stairs without people looking at us weirdly. Once we were in the suites, I was able to breathe. Tonight was going to be ours. Tomorrow we would go to the lab. We decided to take a bath to freshen up. I have a surprise for you, he said as he sat behind me in the tub. Oh! I whispered as I leaned into his touch as his hands roamed my body. It's your birthday in 2 weeks. So I'm taking you out as an early birthday present, he said as he kissed my neck. Where? I managed to moan. You'll see. Adrian helped me pick out an outfit. It's in my suitcase. Cassie, I can smell your arousal. We need to stop. We have to be there in an hour. He groaned. I pouted when he stopped his ministrations and he chuckled. You can do whatever you want to me after, if you have energy. He challenged as he pinched M to get me out of the tub. He handed me a garment bag and said he would get ready in the other room. I opened it up and was thoroughly confused. He was expecting me to wear this? Was Adrian playing a joke? I sighed, I grabbed the pants and slipped them on. They were black pleather bell-bottoms. I put the shirt on and noticed there was no bra. As I slipped on the top, I started looking for more buttons but they seemed to stop below the breastbone. I went over to the mirror. I looked like I was right out of the 1970s. Gonzalo? Are you sure this is the right outfit? I called. Yes. It will make sense later. Just humor me. He shouted back. I took another look into the mirror and sighed. At least it was night, maybe people wouldn't notice. I finished getting ready and went out into the suite. Gonzalo was sitting on the couch. I narrowed my eyes at him. How come you look normal and I look like I'm out of the 1970s? I said as I took in his black slacks and maroon button-up. I tried not to lick my lips at the way the sleeves tightened at the biceps. My man looked good. You're the birthday girl. You get a special outfit. He chuckled as he spoke, but I could his eyes darkening as he took in my figure. His eyes met mine after I'd checked him out as he stood up and he smirked. Like what you see? I smiled. I would pay to see you in some bell-bottoms. Probably makes you look magnificent. Still does, baby. If you're good, you can ask Theo for some pictures. He's the one that keeps all that stuff. He wiggled his eyebrows. Oh, really? Maybe that will be my birthday gift, I laughed. He gave me a light jacket to wear over the outfit and we headed out of the hotel. A few blocks down, we reached our destination at the Edinburgh Playhouse. As I took in the crowd and read the marquee, I started getting excited. No way! How did you know? I clutched his arm excitedly. He laughed. Adrian told me you liked him. When we were looking for a place to take you on a date, we found this and thought it would be perfect. I love you. I squealed as we got in line and I took off the jacket. We got inside and found our way to our seats. After about 20 minutes, the lights dimmed and I find myself on the edge of my seat. The chords begin strumming and the singer comes on stage. Lord Almighty, I feel my temperature rising higher, higher, it's burning through to my soul. The spotlight comes on and the Elvis impersonator is illuminated. I can't help the giddy squeal that left my lips. I always wanted to see Elvis when he was alive, but he never made a tour to Europe, and I wasn't allowed in the New World. I had watched every recording I could get my hands off and still listened to his songs on Spotify when I ran. I could feel Gonzalo's lazy circles in the small of my back as I moved to the rhythm in my seat. I looked over at him and he wasn't paying attention to the show. He was staring at me with a big smile on his face. I grabbed his face and kissed him before I returned my attention to the show. This was definitely worth the outfit. Gonzalo POV. I watched Cassie's face light up with happiness as we listened to song after song, singing every lyric. I owed Adrian big time for this. When we were looking for a play to take her to, I was skeptical when he pointed out this Elvis tribute. Now I am thankful he insisted. She looked like a kid at Christmas. I had stopped watching the show an hour ago. I was fascinated by her smile and the way her eyes sparkled with happiness. I wanted her to have this night. Something to hang on to. I had a feeling the next 2 weeks were going to be tough. Something was coming, and I couldn't help but fear that it would separate us again. I hadn't been sleeping well, and when I did, I tended to have nightmares about the experiments they did on her. I almost wished I hadn't seen what they had done to her. I've been clingy since the vision, but I couldn't help it. I just got her back and I'm afraid it will be short-lived. Neither I nor Dario could bear to be away from her right now. This felt like the calm before the storm. When the air around you is charged with the undercurrents of electricity. Dario felt it too. He's been wary and alert. Even now, as we watched our beautiful mate shimmy along with the songs, we were watching all of those around us. Anyone who dared look at her with lust or curiosity was warned to look away. No one was going to ruin her night. Her slim figure was mine to look at. When the show was over, I walked her over to a guided night tour of the city. It was a cheesy ghost tour, but she appeared to love it, hanging on to my arm and the guide's tales of tragic stories and restless spirits. We finished the night near sunrise, and as I expected, she fell right to sleep the moment we made it to the bed. I chuckled at the happy tired look on her face as she kissed me good night. I stared at her as she slowly settled into me in her sleep. I stood in a corner of the room. Cassie was strapped to the bed, trying to undo her restraints. He in the white coat comes in with a clipboard in his hands and a syringe in the clip. I try to hit him and I realize this is another dream. I'm stuck in another nightmare. It's been the same thing over and over. I know I am lucid dreaming, but I can't seem to affect anything. I don't know why. I've done it before, and I've always been able to wake myself. These are different, I can't change anything. I can't wake up. I have to see it through. But why? What is my subconscious telling me? I watch helplessly as Cassie's face turns from one of rage to fear and then pain. I see Selene show up and kiss her forehead. Her eyes flicker up right before she disappears. I don't understand why a kiss from our goddess would cause her pain. Were vampires not her children too? Why and how is a life of seizures and pain supposed to save her? I wonder as I feel myself being pulled out of my dream. I looked over at Cassie when I woke up. I quietly kissed her forehead and breathed in her scent to calm myself. My breath on her neck elicits a tiny moan and I have to control myself not to wake her to take her then and there. One of us should have the energy for the raid tonight. I had the same nightmare 2 more times before I was finally able to sleep without the nightmare. Of course, 2 hours later it was time to get up. I scrambled out of bed as I heard knocking. Are you guys not up yet? The sun had set half an hour ago. We leave in 20 minutes. He said as he and Elias strolled in. He handed Cassie a tumbler and Elias had a bagel sandwich for me as we started moving about to change and get ready. When Cassie went into the bathroom to change, he asked, "So, did she like it?" I grinned, "She loved it." "You were right. I owe you big." Someone's gotta help Dad get laid," he said nonchalantly. "Who got laid?" Cassie asked as she exited the bathroom. "I did. Every day this week," Adrian answered happily, making Elias blush from the sofa. "Good for you. The bathroom's all yours, love," she said with a kiss before she picked up her tumbler and sat on the love seat. I quickly changed, brushed my teeth, and took a look at myself in the mirror. "Some prized mate we are," Dario grumbled at the dark underbags in the mirror. He was a grumpy wolf when we couldn't sleep. "I'm not grumpy, we look like this," he pointed out. "It is not an exclusive thought. You are both grumpy and we look like this," I told him as I washed my face to try to clear some of the cobwebs from my brain before I went back out to the living room. "The bus is pulling around. Are you guys ready? The rest of us are down at breakfast," Theo asked. "Yeah. We'll be right down," I answered as I reached the living room. "All right, time to go," I said as I took the last bite of the bagel. The friendly atmosphere turned serious as reality set in during the elevator ride. Even Adrian's usually happy personality was muted. We all knew this could be the place to get answers for Cassie. This could change everything. It was about an hour's drive to Glasgow. Everyone was quiet, the tension and nerves coming from us permeating through everyone's mood like rain. I held Cassie's hand on the ride while she looked out the window. I could only imagine what was going through her thoughts. This was the place that had hurt her, changed her. Yet this was also the place where she could get answers. Where she could potentially find the reason for her seizures and a solution. About 20 minutes from the lab, she pulled her phone out to pick her playlist. She kissed my hand before she let it go and she began her meditation. We pulled to the side to wait for the scout's signal. I couldn't feel Cassie's nerves anymore. Just quiet focus. We were going in last this time, to try to look around to see if she could find the doctor that had tested on her. That was our priority. The problem was we didn't know anything about him other than his face. So we were going to be checking everyone over to see if we could find him and get answers. We got the signal and began walking towards the entrance. This lab only had a barbed wire fence and no turrets, probably because of how long it's been here. There were plenty of guards though, so the four of us decided to help out around the perimeter until so we could grab the change of shift by surprise. This place was different, it didn't have 2 shifts, it had 3. So there was always a fully armed shift on duty. We were dealing with the last of the guards when we heard the sirens going off. Something had gone wrong. We started running as I added Theo, Seb, Helios, and Nat to a mind link. "Where's the issue, Dot?" I asked. "It's not the lockers. We're good here. It's almost secure," Theo answered. "We're still on the way to the main room," came Helios' response. "I haven't heard anything from Isidro's group." "They went towards the right," was Seb's reply. "Okay. We'll head that way," I said before cutting off the mind link. "We go right," I told the other 3. We pushed through the double doors and everything was quiet. There were several bodies knocked out along the hallway, already zip-tied and dealt with. We walked a little way before we found the right door. This place was not like all the ones in the States. We didn't know the layout. We only knew the location of the locker rooms because our scouts had seen them all head to the same place upon arrival. The hall was the same as the main one, with knocked out bodies on either side, but the problem was that this hallway split into 3 ways. One was empty, the other 2 had about 10 guards fighting at once on each side. I see Isidro and 3 of our guys down one way and one of our mated bears, Iggy, along with 2 others were fighting in the second. I sent Adrian and Elias down to help the bear, but my question was, why hadn't he shifted? There was enough space in the hall for him to shift and take control of the situation. And on that note, why hadn't any of them shifted? Cassie began pulling people from Isidro as we arrived into the cluster of bodies. I tried to call Dario forward so I could use my claws but nothing happened. In fact, I could barely feel his presence in my head. What was going on? I didn't have too much time to ponder as I reached the 2 guards on top of Noah. I pulled the guard directly on top of Noah, who was on the floor. His leg was broken, but it should be healing. His head was bleeding where the guard had hit him with the butt of his baton. I slammed the guard against the wall and punched him in the face, knocking him out. Beta. Wolfbane. In his vest. I heard Isidro call out over the throng of guards. I grabbed the vest of the man I had knocked out and found a small aerosol can. Smelling, I instantly understood what had happened. They had created an aerosol spray of wolfsbane and we'd all been inhaling it since we stepped into the hall. I grabbed Lucas by the scruff of the shirt. He had a busted lip and his eyebrow was open. Drag Noah around the corner. Go find Helios and warn him of what's happening. Tell him to check on the other groups and that we'll need Nat at the front of the hall when she can. Make sure they don't come down this way if they are hurt. They won't be able to heal. Go. He moved as I punched another man in the throat. Cassie was helping with the people on top of Isidro, not being affected by the aerosol. She was making quick work of them. She and Adrian were our best bets to get all of us out of this in one piece. We were dealing with the last 5 on our side when I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I turned around to see a gun raised at the crowd on the other side. The gun went off and Kyle dropped to the floor instantly. His eye stared at nothing with the other eye splattered on the wall. The gun went off again and Adrian used his speed to jump in front of Elias. I see blood bloom from his shoulder as he manages to push Elias out of the way just in time. The bullet pushes through and whizzes into Elias' arm, making him scream in pain. The gun goes off a third time and I hear Iggy grunt as the bullet goes into him. The man looks at me and shoots, but it misses as I begin to run towards him. He turns and begins running down the empty hall. He won't be getting away. I recognize him and I feel Dario stirring in the back of my head in frustration and rage. It's him. The man that tortured Cassie. Beta. Silver bullets. Elias yells after me as Adrian pulls him towards safety. Take him to the front of the hall. Nat will meet you there. Help Iggy. I scream, then I turn to Cassie who is fighting against the other two. Stay here. I'll grab him. Wait, she yells, but I keep going. I push past the door and into a bigger lab. I dodge the bullet that he shoots my way as I enter the room and dash behind some machine. That was 5. I saw the revolver. There should only be one more bullet. I needed to draw it out so I could run at him. The door burst open as I was thinking of how to get him to shoot again and I heard the gun go off. I felt a pain burst from my abdomen and rage filled me as I realized the pain came from Cassie. Cassie had been shot. I push off from behind the machine and ran towards the doctor. He raised the gun again and directs it to me. He doesn't have any more bullets, I think, before I hear the blast go off once. My eyes widen as I try to dive away from the speed of the bullet. The gun goes off again and I feel a burning sting along the side of my neck. I land on the floor and my hand goes immediately to my neck. I can feel the blood spilling from the wound. A new worry fills me as I start feeling faint when I try to stand, falling back on the floor as I slip in my own blood. Dario is under the effects of wolfsbane. If this got my artery, he can't heal me. I look over and see Cassie has the doctor up against the wall. Her anger is radiating from her in waves and I feel it in my chest. I try to call her, but no words come out. She's talking to the doctor but I can barely hear her. Suddenly, the doctor's eyes meet mine and he smirks. You want answers, princess? I can give them to you. Or you could save your friend. By the amount of blood leaving his body, he's got about a minute before he's gone. Your choice. Cassie snarls and turns around. Her eyes widen as she sees me on the floor and I see several emotions cross her face. She drops the doctor, who begins to run towards a door on the back of the room, and she's instantly by my side. Why aren't you healing? Why is Dario not healing you? She asks, the worry evident in her eyes. Wolfsbane, Silver, I manage to say. By how tired I'm feeling, I know the doctor wasn't lying. Mind link NAT, she pleads. Wolfsbane. I repeat. I'll go get her, she said, getting up, but I grab her hand. I know if she leaves, I won't be alive before she gets back. Stay, I begged her. Tears of frustration filled my eyes. This wasn't fair. I just got her back. Now I was the one leaving her. She already went through my death once, then I came waltzing back into her life just to make her go through it again. I'm sorry, I tell her. Sorry for not reacting quicker. Sorry that I should have noticed the revolver had an 8 mag instead of 6. But most of all, I was sorry that I was going to leave her. Her eyes welled up with tears as she realizes what I'm telling her. No. Fight. I didn't just get you back to lose you again. You can't leave me, Lalo. You can't. Somebody help. Nayat, she screams as she finishes. She removes my hand from my neck and takes off her already blood-soaked shirt to put pressure on my neck. I grab one of her hands and bring it to my lips. It's okay. I love you. I'll find you again. I whisper as I feel my consciousness slowly slipping. I have so much I needed to tell her before I go. So many apologies and so much love to give her. Elias, go get Nat. Adrian's voice comes from the door before I see him right behind her. I try to smile at him, but I'm not sure if I am successful. I heard Nat and Helios curse as they come into the room. Nat removes Cassie's hand from my neck and tries to heal me. The Wolfsbane. My power isn't working. We need to get him out of here and into the fresh air so Hestia can come forward. She said, and I can hear the panic in her voice. I shake my head slightly. It's okay, Nat. I try to comfort her as she starts crying. I hear Cassie sobbing at my side and I look at Adrian, who looks like he's about to lose it. Adrian, keep together. Don't let Cassie do anything stupid, I struggle to finish. I close my eyes. It's getting too hard to keep them open. I half hear Adrian's faraway voice as I slip into unconsciousness. All I can think of is how I wish I had those 200 years back. I would have done things differently. I wish I had more time. I know I'm a selfish, living for as long as I have, but I didn't want to leave her yet. Kasha POV what? I managed to croak out at Adrian as I watch the life-giving blood slipping out of Gonzalo. I was losing him. I could feel the sparks of the mate bond less and less as the blood left his body. Adrian's words were trying to penetrate through my grief, but it was hard. I saw Gonzalo's eyes close. No, I whimpered as I put my forehead to his. Don't leave me again, I begged him. I can't live in this world without you again. I only just got him back. I ignored the pressure building in my head as I prayed for him to wake up. Bite him, Cassie, Adrian said again. You can't turn a werewolf, Adrian Helios answers, his voice cracking at the end. Not turn him. Mark him. Make him your beloved. You're a princess, Cassie. Even if they took your title, your blood is strong. It is royal vampire blood. It will help him hang on and speed his healing even with the wolf's bane and silver. I hiccup. Could it work? I moved to his front, pushing his face to the other side of his neck. I only hesitated, taking away his choice for a moment. What did it matter if he was mad at me if he lived? I bit his neck and pulled. The taste of him burst into my mouth, but the draw was sluggish. He had lost too much blood. I released my marking venom into his neck and I felt his body jerk slightly and I pulled back. I ripped the skin on my wrist. Blood flowed rapidly, causing it to drip all over him as I brought it up to his lips. I filled his mouth but he didn't swallow. His heartbeat was so slow. I could barely hear it now. No. Come on baby, swallow. You need to swallow. I said frantically as I moved his lips. Nothing. Desperate, I kissed him, blowing air down his windpipe, trying to get his mouth to swallow my blood. This wouldn't work if he didn't finish the marking. His heart stopped and the sparks disappeared. A gut-wrenching sob left my throat as I started pumping it for him, compressing his chest and blowing air into his lungs. I just need one heartbeat, one gulp. I kept pumping and when I thought all was lost, I heard it. It was faint but it was there. His eyes fluttered open slightly before they closed again and I tore at my already healed wrist and fed him my blood again. He swallowed. I continued to pump his heart for him for a while longer and then stopped to listen. The entire room stood silently waiting and then, there it was. A precious beat, followed by another beat. The most beautiful sound in the world to me aside from his laugh. I let out a relieved breath as his heart started returning to normal, which came out sounding more like a sob. I dropped onto his chest and listened to his heartbeat as I felt the sparks slowly return to their original intensity. Cassie. We need to get him outside so Nat can finish healing him. Helios' voice cut through my many thoughts of thanks to the moon goddess for letting him come back to me. I lifted myself up and swayed. Crap! She's lost too much blood. She was shot before marking Gonzalo. Adrian said as he came over to steady me and inspect the wound that was still open on my abdomen. I only then noticed that Seb and Theo were in the room too, both of them holding each other with tears in their eyes. I'm fine, Adrian. Help Gonzalo. I told him as I tried to push away from him. We've got him. We have blood on the bus. We'll be right behind you with Gonzalo. Helios said. I simply looked at him, too tired to even lift an eyebrow in argument. He sighed as he wiped his tears from his face. Yet okay. Adrian, pick her up. We'll take them both together, he said as he picked up Gonzalo. Theo and Seb opened the double doors and they took us outside towards the bus. I sat at the edge of the cargo bay under the bus as they put Gonzalo next to me. His head was placed on my lap. His cut was healing, but it was still trickling a little and it kept reopening as it tried to repair itself. I put my hand over it. The mate bond is supposed to help. I felt Gonzalo stir. His eyes fluttered open slightly. Cassie, his voice was barely audible, I saw her. Saw who, my love? I asked, but he went unconscious again. It's the silver. We need to clean it and then let Nat finish healing him, Theo said. I looked over to the side where Helios was holding Nat as she tried to clear the wolf's bane from her lungs so she could bring her wolf forward. When they approached 2 minutes later, I asked, "Are you okay? Your pup?" "We're fine, Cassie." The wolf's bane was minimal. "May I?" she asked. I nodded as Helios brought over a cooler for her to sit next to us. She gently wiped the cut clean before she puts her hand on it and closes her eyes. She smiled when she opened it back up, and when she removed her hand, there was nothing but a scar on his neck. It tried to close too many times on its own. I couldn't stop the scar tissue from forming. She said apologetically. "Thank you, Nat," I said as Adrian brought down a bag of blood for me. "Dude, where's my tumbler?" I asked, annoyed and tired. "I couldn't find it." He shrugged as he handed me the bag. "Drink, Cassie. No one here will judge you," Helios said. I sighed and nodded as I tore a hole into the bag and drank. After the second bag, I felt a little less tired and Adrian looked a little less worried. "The rest of the lab has been secured. Nat, we've got a few coming out that need to heal." There were more than one aerosol cans released. Thankfully none of the injuries are too serious other than a few broken bones. "Alpha," I said as I combed my fingers through Gonzalo's hair. The door on the other side of the lab where Gonzalo was shot. "A man went through it. The doctor that injected me. Someone should check to where it leads." "Did you find out anything?" he asked as he called over 2 trackers. "No. He gave me a choice. I could beat him for answers or I could try to save Gonzalo, so I let him go." I answered without looking up. "Thank you," Helios said. My eyes snapped to him. He raised his hands before I could say anything. "I know. I'm not trying to say that you would have made another choice. I know there was only one choice for you. But just, thank you. You saved my best friend," he said. I nodded and went back to combing Gonzalo's hair. The rest of the evening passed by quietly. There were 3 total deaths on our side. 6 of the kidnapped shifters were killed with silver when they discovered that we were in the building. The only shifters that survived were bears and they were found half dead. Nat had to stop healing for an hour to regain her energy after she brought them back from the brink. In total, we only managed to rescue 3 bears and 1 vampire. Gonzalo hadn't woken up 4 hours later, but Nat assured us that he just needed rest to make up for the blood loss. We didn't find the doctor. The door led down a corridor with an exit. We did find out his name and grabbed his personal computer. Merrill Argyle. Such a common and disappointing name. It didn't sound like the name of an evil genius like I'd built him up in my head. Hopefully, we can get some information from it as to what happened to me. I didn't hold out much hope, but I would trade answers for Gonzalo any day in a heartbeat. All in all, when we helped all the wounded into the bus, the mood was grim. I don't think anyone was thinking the results were worth the lives we'd lost, and I mostly agreed. We got back to Edinburgh to stay the day in another seedy motel. After I made sure that Gonzalo was clean and as comfortable as I could get him, I went to see if Helios needed some help. "Cassie, go rest," Nat instructed as Adrian grabbed me and turned me to go back towards the room. "How are you feeling? You and Elias got shot too, right?" I asked as he escorted me back. We're good. Nat healed Elias of the silver and I healed pretty quickly, he said, then stopped and hugged me. Not that I didn't age 100 years seeing Gonzalo like that. Are you okay? I nodded and a tiny sniffle escaped. Yeah, I didn't think so. Get some rest, Cassie. Being with Gonzalo will help you. If you need anything, call. I will cover myself in a blanket if I need to and be here in a jiffy. Thank you, Adrian. I know you keep saying I'm your mom, but sometimes it feels like you take more care of me than I do of you. I said quietly. Nonsense. You usually would have had to beat the crap out of 5 people by now because of my big mouth. We take care of each other. Now go sleep, mother, he ordered. I chuckled and went back into the room. I took a hot bath to wash away all the blood on my body and then crawled into bed with Gonzalo. I didn't bother with clothes. I needed to feel his warmth next to me. To assure myself that he was still here. I had a nightmare. I was trapped in the lab bed again. Except I wasn't. It was like the vision Celeste had shown me. I was watching as this was happening to myself. I see the serum being pumped into my veins and I see her appearing again. She bends down to kiss my forehead and I hear her, clear as day. I'm sorry. This is the only way to save you. I feel like the scene is about to end as I watch myself screaming in agony when Selene stands and looks my way. He will give you answers, but he doesn't have the ones you need. Your torment will be over soon. Trust your mate. Trust in the bond I've forged between you. I woke up dazed. I looked around as the dream begins to fade from my memory no matter how much I try to hang on to it. Within minutes, I can barely remember what she said. Something about trusting Gonzalo and answers. After trying to remember and failing, I went back to sleep. I woke up again sometime later to a knock on the door. I put on a long shirt and Gonzalo's spare boxers. Coming, I said. Just unlock the door when you're ready, Cassie. It's still daylight. Helios' voice came through. I opened the door and walked over to the bathroom. It's safe, Alpha, I said as loudly as I could without disturbing Gonzalo. I knew he wanted to check in on him. I heard the door open and close. I walked out of the restroom and sat back on the bed. Helios took a chair over to Gonzalo and checked his vitals and his eyes. It looks like he's good. Dario is still present and healing him. He'll sleep a while longer and hopefully he'll be up by the time we have to leave. How are you doing? I'm fine now. I just need him to wake up and I'll be better. I answered truthfully. Do you think he will get mad? I asked nervously as I looked over at the silver beloved bite on his left shoulder. For saving his life? Helios asked incredulously. For taking away his choice, I corrected. We spoke about how he shouldn't mark me until the full moon. We never discussed a beloved mark. You think Gonzalo and Dario won't jump for joy at the thought of being bonded to you in every way? He's loved you for 200 years, Cassie. You don't have anything to worry about. I let out the breath I'd been holding, then I noticed the smile disappear from his face. I have some information I thought you deserved to know. About Gonzalo? I asked. No. The doctor. The one that experimented on you, he started. What about him? He got away. He did, he mentioned, at first. I left 2 trackers to follow his scent. I tensed at his words. They found him in the forest about an hour after we left. He's an old man, so he didn't get very far. They found him under some brush, trying to wait us out. I stood up. Where is he? My blood was beginning to boil and all I could see was red. Gonzalo stirred. His eyebrows furrowed and I realized he could feel my anger now. I took a steadying breath as I sat back down on the bed and pushed my fingers through his hair to calm him down. I want to see him, I said more calmly after a few minutes. I know you do. We have him knocked out right now. We'll be taking him back with us to Guardian Moon. You can question him there. Can you hold on that long? He asked. I've waited 23 years. I can wait a few days. I answered without hesitation. He looked relieved at my words. Do you need anything? If Gonzalo isn't awake by sunset, we're just going to wait until tomorrow to leave. He said. I'm fine. I just need him to wake up. He nodded in understanding and left. I cuddled up to Gonzalo again and went to sleep. I woke up a few hours later as I felt a strong arm go around my torso and sparks blossomed from where our skin touched. I opened my eyes and looked up at his walnut brown eyes, full of emotion. I felt my heart flutter. You're awake. I cried as I stood up and pushed him back into the bed and bent down to kiss his face. I kissed his eyes, his nose, his ears, and his cheeks. He started chuckling and let me do what I needed. When I finally got to his lips, his hands grabbed my face and held me there as he deepened the kiss. He pushed me over to my back when I moaned and he plunged his tongue into my mouth. My whole body lit on fire at his touch, but it was too soon. I could feel how his chest was moving too fast. He was running out of breath too quickly. I pushed gently on his chest and he fell back onto the bed. He was trying to catch his breath and he still looked tired. Are you okay? I asked. He pulled me to his side and nodded. His breathing evened out fairly quickly, but I saw as a tear gathered and fell from his eye. What's wrong? Does something hurt? Should I call Nat? I grabbed his face and turned it so I could see the scar on his neck. He grabbed my hands and brought them to his face. He kissed each one before he pulled me down to lay on him. I thought I was gone. I thought I wouldn't see your beautiful eyes again. How am I still here? I got nervous at his question. Would he be mad? Helios said he wouldn't be. Cassie? He asked. I marked you. I said. I saw his eyes go wide and his hand went to his neck to feel for the mark. I'm sorry. We never talked about making you my beloved, but it was the only way to save you. My blood helped you heal and bring you back. Since I have royal vampire blood in me. Dario was still suppressed so he couldn't heal you, I word vomited nervously. I watched as he just stares into my eyes. His face is displaying no emotion at all, but I can tell he's searching for something. He hasn't claimed me, so I can only sense a slight tense undercurrent from him from the mate bond before he shuts me out of it. My heart is caught in my throat as I wait for him to speak. Do you wish you didn't have to mark me? That there had been another way to save me aside from claiming me as your beloved? He asked. His voice had a slight quiver at the end and I thought I could see his wolf in his eyes. I didn't understand his question. He can't possibly mean what I thought he was asking. I have made my stance on him very clear. There had ever only been one for me. I wish I hadn't been in a position to mark you against your will. I wish you hadn't gotten hurt, I answered him. When he still only looked at me, waiting for me to continue, I started getting mad. I wish we could have talked about it, and I wished it would have been the special moment my mother always told me about. He said nothing. I went to get up out of his embrace and he tried to pull me back. He was still very weak, so it didn't take much effort to overpower him and leave the bed. "Where are you going?" he asked, sitting up. "I am going to shower, Gonzalo, and when I come back out of that bathroom, I better not hear the question you just asked me again." I grounded out. He nodded. "I understand," he said quietly, looking away. I almost hissed and slammed his perfect body into the bed rest. How many times and how many ways can I tell him that I wanted forever with him? I showered quickly, and when I came back out, he was falling asleep sitting up. My heart hurt at how weak and vulnerable he still looked, and I wanted nothing more than to hold him in my arms, but it hurt that he still doubted my love for him. I needed air. Everything was just too much right now. I grabbed my cell phone and wallet and put on my shoes. "Where are you going?" he asked a second time. I stopped at the door when I saw him looking at me. He looked worried and sad. "I need space. Helios said if you weren't awake by sunset we were staying for another day, so I'll be back before sunrise. Think about everything you just said to me." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.